Welcome back to Magic Hour Podcast, my love. Taylor Paige here.
And I'm Claire. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone.
It is time for Intuitive Development Part 2. I love this topic so much.
It's so fun. I loved our last episode. I could have talked about it forever. So I'm so excited that we get to talk about it more.
Immediately, we were like, it's time for a part 2. And I was like, is this going to be the next Arthur Findlay College where we thought somehow we would do it in one episode and then it turned into 4? But I was like, no, Arthur Findlay College was so crazy and so much to document. So maybe there will be a part 3 in the future. But for now, I think let's see how it goes. Before we get into it, though, I just had such a beautiful experience. I'm basically traveled all of April and May. I've been out of the office so freaking much. And now I'm back, and it feels so good to be back in my purpose, getting back to work, connecting with you guys. And I had a beautiful hummingbird. And this is what's so exciting too, because so many people have found me and my work from other podcasts. And now people are starting to find me just from Magic Hour, which is really cool and gratifying. I mean, however you find me is perfect and meant to be, but it's just really special. So I had a client session yesterday, and I'm not going to say where she was from, but she's from all the way on the other side of the world in this really small town. And she's like, I was having these mystical experiences and I was so afraid of them. And I thought I was going crazy and I didn't know it was happening. And she was like, I searched all over the internet for like podcasts, articles, anything to help understand. And she's like, and I stumbled across your podcast. And she's like, it's the first thing that really resonated with me and helped me. And she's like, I binge listened to every single episode and I felt so much more supported and held in the space. And she comes from this small town where nobody talks about mystical experiences or spirituality. And she just felt so alone. And she's like, your podcast was the one that really resonated with me. And then I got to give her a reading and we connected. And it just touched my heart so much because you and I, we record and we're here together on the internet, but sometimes it's easy for us to forget there's a world of people out there actually listening to this. And so connecting with her and the fact that she just found the podcast by searching, no one even told her about it. It just meant so much to me, and connecting with you guys means so much to me. And I love that there's just a whole database of grounded, ethical, spiritual podcasts in Magic Hour for you guys to connect to.
Oh, that's such a cool story. I just love that. Especially as someone, I think all of our listeners would agree with this. Like, I'm someone who's been on my own journey of like exploring and accepting and embracing these types of things. And sometimes it can feel really intimidating and lonely. I was just in an experience with a group of people, and most of them are like of this mindset, but there was one person there who was very much not and had a really hard and aggressive energy about it. And we were pulling spirit animal cards and he got nasty about it and basically just didn't want to accept it was real or whatever. I don't know what was going on with him, but having those experiences with people can really make you feel like you don't want to open up to it or don't know how. And I'm just so grateful to be in community with my community who's open to it, and also this hummingbird community of people. Like, you're not alone. You're surrounded by so much magic, and we all feel it too. Never doubt that that connection is real. And if you ever need a place to go to be reminded, I love that this is a place you can go to listen and feel connected.
Yes, we are part of a shimmer. That's the group of hummingbird, right?
Yes. A shimmer or a charm, right?
Yeah, exactly. We're part of a shimmer or a charm. And guess what? Not everybody's that cool.
That's right.
Honestly, I'm at the point in my life, in my development, where when people are so nasty and don't want to believe in this, it's one thing to have a different belief than someone. But when there's the emotional charge of trying to bring someone down or lash out behind that, it points to an unhealed part of their psyche. And so that person clearly carried his own witch wound in some way. It's one thing if it's just like, I'm more just like a logical, practical atheist, but you do you if that brings you comfort. That to to me is cool. We can coexist with that. But somebody who tries to knock you or bring you down or discredit you in an unkind way, that says way more about them than you.
Yeah, it was interesting to see my own evolution of my witch wound with it because I think in years past it would have really triggered me and made me feel looked down on or whatever. But it made me feel kind of sad for him where I was like, oh, like we're all coming together and exploring this beautiful moment with each other and diving into what each of the animals mean and what it could mean about our journey and the synchronicities. And he closed himself off to it. Just made me sad for him. It didn't make me feel like attacked. And that was definitely, at least for my journey, cool to see. And like you said, it's just something about their own witch wound that needs exploring. And hopefully one day he'll be open to it.
Absolutely. And I feel similarly to you. Like, I just feel bad for people that have closed themselves off to this birthright of intuitive connection. And as I've said, it's actually a more modern phenomenon for us to be closed off. For like millennia of ancestral consciousness, we were open. It's a fairly relatively new thing to be closed. Like, there's a neighbor and they've lost a lot of people, and they're like, I just don't believe in mediumship. And it just makes me so sad because I'm like, ugh, well, I can feel your loved ones want to connect with you. And it's okay though, because time works differently in the spirit world. We're in these bodies for such a short amount of time, and then we'll return to oneness and more will be clear anyway. So it's just kind of like, okay, dude, you believe whatever you want for this blip of time. I also wanted to say it's really interesting how you got something that would have previously maybe had a different effect or trigger from that guy, because that's been happening to me too. I almost feel like our angels and guides are sending us these very low stake situations that show us how far we've come in our anxious attachment healing or nervous system regulation. That kind of happened for me the other day, where something like, if I'm around someone and they're in a bad mood, I would get all anxious and like running through what I could do to change it or what I did wrong. And that just didn't happen. I was like, oh, they're in a bad mood. Okay, I hope they feel better. And I just continued on with my night. And I feel like we're all getting sent, like when you said that, and the synchronicity of that triggered a knowing in me that we're in this moment where like old triggers are not having the same effect on us, and our angels and guides are showing us that in a gentle way to show how far we've come.
Yeah, it's like that spiral thing we talk about where it's like you confront a similar thing, but you have a different toolbox now, or your toolbox is evolved in a way. And it's like these beautiful check in moments of, oh, yeah, my friend is in a bad mood. I'm so like that. I'll notice an energy shift in my friend. And my previous way would be to completely take the blame and be like, it must be about me. She's mad at me. What have I done to cause this? Oh, no, no. Now I understand. I'm like, I'm sure that's just whatever she's going through. And I don't need to take it on as something I've done. And that realization is so cool to see the progress. And we often don't get those moments, or we miss those moments. So, yeah, I feel like our guides are like purposely giving those to us so that we can check in with our progress and our growth.
Yeah, and it's even healing on such a physical level, because we go into like low grade fight or flight when we're anxiously attached like that. And when we're just still in this like secure place, it's so healing, and it's so much less of an energy suck in every single way. So, golf claps all around. So, part of being back right now has been really starting to dive deep into my mentorship program. And it's really interesting because I've been sitting in the power and kind of staying open before my sessions. And then all of this urgency and these amazing exercises that I want to lead people through are coming through. And I've been getting so excited about it. And I feel like before, this is the feeling I wanted to be in, but I didn't have the spaciousness. And I feel like taking some time and traveling and resetting. I was feeling kind of burnt out before my travels, and coming back, I feel like the time is now to create this beautiful container, which, if you're not familiar, I'm creating a mentorship container called Becoming the Oracle. I'm only going to take 8 mentees at once, but I'm going to run it more than once. So I know that there's hummingbirds from every part of the world that listen and tune in and are also interested. So I'll group people based off of like time zone, but also experience level and just who I intuitively think will work well together. But I also trust in a greater plan, and that the 8 that work out at a time will be perfect. But I have just been in this flow with it. And it's so exciting because I just know that this program is going to be insane and it's going to be so activating and it's literally going to help you become the oracle. And I'm putting everything from 10 years of experience that I have into this. But on top of that, the exercises that are being channeled through to do in the group container are like so fire. And we're really going to break down the building blocks because I think, and we'll get more into this, but I think one of the biggest pitfalls that I see in people on their intuitive development journeys is that they bite off more than they can chew in the beginning. Like they start trying to tap into questions about themselves, about things that they're extremely attached to the outcome, which is like so advanced, especially for someone just starting off. And so I think in the mentorship container, we're going to be breaking down, can you just get yeses and nos and be accurate about that? And with things that we can validate yes or no that you couldn't have known. So it's learning the building blocks to strengthen your language with your intuition and your angels and your guides to get to the place where you can feel into more nuanced, layered things that you might also have attachments to. So there's so much that we're going to go into. If you're interested in applying for the mentorship, you can email taylor@angelsandamethyst.com. I have a list going of people who have expressed interest. This is going to be probably September, October time is when the actual container will be. I'm developing it right now and more details will come out. But already the prerequisites for the program are the Be Your Own Angelic Intuitive workshop and also Healing the Witch Wound workshop, because I'm not going to go backwards and reteach that material, but it's super important to the path. So code 333 will give you $33 off of both of those. You can find them at angelsandamethyst.com. And then, yeah, I'll add you to the email list and more information will come out. But I'm just like so lit up about it. I feel so fired up. And I know it's honestly going to be one of the best intuitive development mentorships I think out there.
Yes, I agree. I'm so excited about this. I have chills just hearing about it. And even going back to the topic of intuition, like we're talking about, it's such a clear sign when we're on the right path that we get these ideas and flooded like excitement and inner knowing of, ooh, this idea or this offering or this exercise. Like when we're on that path, I feel like ideas come and flow. So I'm just so excited. And I know that it's going to be so beneficial for everyone that's involved and just such a beautiful thing to offer too, Taylor. You know, it's like not sitting on your throne giving out info to us, but helping us be that for ourselves. Such a beautiful thing to do.
Thank you so much. And same for, I also want people to take this who want to do this professionally too, because we can use a next generation of more ethical, grounded, evidence based readers. And I can help you have the foundation and toolbox to step into that space. So it's just exciting whether you want to get better for self divination purposes or both, but we'll be exploring both in very deep ways in the course and also just even themes of being the oracle during energetically complicated collective times. And I feel like sometimes there can be pressure to post fear mongering content or predict big things. There's so many ways that I see readers in ego, not service on social media through these kind of energetically layered and turbulent times. And there's also going to be an element of talking about that. Like we're not just oracles on the island, we're oracles in this society with so much wrong and how we can use our channel and our clarity to be of service.
Yes, that's so beautiful. It's a challenging time for sure. And, you know, we can all give our gifts to help the collective. So it's just such a beautiful thing to focus on within that container as well.
Yeah, thank you. And that feeling of flow, like every workshop I've ever created has felt like it was channeled through me and wrote itself. And I knew that's the energy I had to be in for this mentorship container. And so I was like, I just have to step away and come back. And it's been funny too, because every single client session that I've had after I get these exercises channeled through me are people that I think are going to join the mentorship container. It's like they're asking about intuitive development and wanting to take it to the next level. And of course, as I was sitting in the power, that's everything that was coming through to me right before I get on with them. So it's just been very synchronistic.
I love that. Yeah, it's like that flow. I find that when I'm writing too. It's like sometimes I'll sit down with an idea that feels right and it feels like it just flows right out of me. And I kind of don't even know where it came from. And that's when you know you're like really in the pocket.
Absolutely. It feels so good. I love that feeling.
It really does.
So let's get into some intuitive development questions.
Well, I have a story in front of me, so let's go with that. Okay. Hi, Taylor and Claire. For starters, I just have to say that Taylor has very much paved the most beautiful and accessible path into a deeper understanding of the wisdom and knowing we all hold inside. And she has played a huge role in my own personal growth and discovery. The way you both weave so much love and authenticity into each episode is truly magical. Thank you. I can count a few times my intuition has saved my life, but one stands out the most for me. This was long before I had any realization of being in tune with my intuition, which always wows me so much looking back. A large group of friends and I were camping. We were supposed to go out on the lake, and our friend's boat was having issues. We ended up renting a pontoon boat from the campgrounds. We were making our way to a more secluded part of the lake so that we could get out and swim around. Everyone was dancing and partying to music. I felt like I needed to be more aware and less carefree, so I was sitting on a seat in the middle of the boat. I very urgently had the thought that the boat was going to sink because they were standing too far at the front. Without thinking twice, I casually tried to tell them the boat was going to sink. As you can imagine, everyone laughed and then made comments about me being a party pooper. They had barely gotten through their own laughter about my comment, and sure enough, the front of the boat started to go under. Everyone and everything went sliding to the front, but luckily the driver and I were pretty alert and ready, and we were able to grab everyone over the gate and back far enough to save the boat and everyone else. My friends, of course, immediately apologized and felt awful for not trusting me, while also wondering why I had any idea that would happen. Fast forward to now, when I am actively working to further develop my psychic and mediumship abilities with a very supportive group of friends. With endless gratitude, Shelley.
Wow, that is so powerful, Shelley. And I also just got the sense from that story that you were meant to expand their minds. It's funny that we're talking about, like in the beginning, in this little intro that Claire and I just did about low stake lessons. And it's like none of you guys were going to die from that. But it was one, a low stake way that they could show you, hey, your intuition is spot on, trust it. And a low stake way to wake up your friends to this fact of like, hey, there's more than meets the eye. Intuition is real. Trust that. So I think that that is such a beautiful story in so many ways. Even that feeling, like intuitive knowings and hits always come with a feeling, and that feeling is never anxiety. Sometimes the intuitive hit can then be picked apart by your ego. Attachment to outcomes and fear might come up, but the sense of when the message actually comes in, even if it's for just a second, is either urgency, purpose, like warmth, being held, love, but it's not anxiety. And so in that, she was saying, I just got the very purposeful, clear feeling to sit towards the back of the boat and that we can't all be at the front of the boat. So that was such a perfect illustration of what we're talking about.
Yeah. And I think one of the biggest or hardest lessons, at least for me with my intuitive development, has been like when I have an intuitive knowing and it's not being echoed by my peer group around me immediately. That is such a hard moment of self doubt because, you know, if I'm saying I feel this and no one else is saying they feel it, it's so easy to then be like, oh, I must be wrong. They're not feeling it. I must be wrong, and doubt yourself. And I've been on a really cool journey with that, you know, for a while, but really over the past couple of months where something happened for me with that. And my peer group didn't totally echo it back to me. But I just knew inside, I was like, I can trust how I feel. And it was such a cool lesson for me to stick with it, even without their validation. And then seeing more and more how I was right to trust myself and how that then gets to translate into the next time. Like Taylor says, we said this on the last episode, that your intuition is the sum of all the times you've trusted yourself. And I feel that so deeply. Like now that trust is so much more deepened because I did it before and I was right. And so I feel like this is such a great story exemplifying that.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. Okay, let's go into a question.
Okay. So we've got a question from April. I'm very clairaudient, but avoid it because it comes in too fast. Would love insight.
Yes. So this is very common. I think people, maybe from film or TV or the way psychics are portrayed, think that it's just this languid process of just tuning in and having constant streams of information that's very vivid and clear. But in reality, it's like these quick flashes, whether it's a feeling kind of actually draws out the longest. So whether it's a knowing, a vision, or a hearing, they're quick. And then feeling kind of feeds the other clairs. So, feeling is one of the most important psychic senses because when you get a hearing, a knowing, or a vision, like I was saying, there will always be a feeling. When you're getting flashes of hearing, it will start to get a little bit longer the more it's developed, but it's almost like it comes in as a flash because that's as long as you can perceive it with the current level of power that you're holding because of the development level. But there's so much more information you can get from a flash than you realize. What was the tone of the voice? Was there a feeling? Did the voice feel timid? Did it feel loud and booming? Did it feel like it didn't quite speak English, like it was another language? Was it a boy's voice or a girl's voice? There's so many things that you can get from just a flash of hearing that would actually really surprise you. That's the thing about intuitive development is that we're all getting so much more information if we actually knew where to look. And so one of the most important things that I've learned is to zoom in on the evidence instead of thinking of quantity in terms of like that was so fast and I need the next thing. It's zooming in on what you are getting and really getting every drop out of it because we kind of, because of the quick nature of it, throw out a lot of the valuable information. Even when we have a knowing about something, like this person isn't good for me. If we sit with that knowing, there's usually deeper layers of knowing within the knowing that we can eke out, but we kind of just go to the next thing immediately. So I think with intuitive development, sometimes our egos can get involved and we want it to look a certain way, like comparing to other people's process, but we can get so much more. It's actually amazing that you're getting flashes of hearing. That's a really good sign. And I would not run from it or feel like you're not developed enough or not doing a good job, but I would zoom in on the hearing that you are getting.
That's great. I wonder, and this is just my humble suggestion, but we've talked a lot about a miracle journal where you can like write down times where there have been synchronicities. And I wonder if it might be helpful for you to just jot down a quick note about whatever the hearing, like clairaudient moment was, without even necessarily needing to put a lot on it, of just like, heard this, heard that, heard this. And then taking a look at that from a more like zoomed out thing of like, okay, maybe the picture will become a little bit clearer as you start to see some patterns or you start to see like what you jotted down in that moment versus kind of needing to have a full answer in the moment that you get something. I think that can be like a little more gentle and like playful curiosity with it. Like, I heard this. What could that mean? I don't have to have an answer. I just can like log it in my book and then, explore it further when I have the time.
I think you're hitting on something really important that is a big pitfall of intuitive downloads and hits is that then we try to attach a meaning to it. And that's not giving what we get. That's interpretation. That's when the mind comes in. And that's when we start to go down a path that's not intuition anymore, it's imagination. So it's really important. And I'm so glad you brought this up to not be like, I heard this. What could it mean? Instead, that would be zooming out and coming into imagination, attachment to outcomes, and interpretation. And anytime as a professional reader that I try to interpret instead of giving exactly what I get, that's when I get a no from the client. When I give exactly what I get, even when my brain doesn't understand the why, it's actually a really good sign when your brain doesn't understand what you're getting because that shows that it's not your imagination making it up. So when you get a flash of hearing and your brain doesn't understand why, green light, two thumbs up. Instead of trying to say, why am I getting this? What does this mean? And any questions that are trying to put you into interpretation mode, which is piling your story on top of the clear channel of intuitive information. That's why I'm saying zoom in, like take the juice out of it. So like, okay, did I get a feeling with it? How did it sound? What was the tone? Is the voice familiar? Where did I perceive the voice? Which ear? Is it close to my face? Do I feel any energy in my body as I was doing that? Start to notice and be the observer of the other subtle stimuli that comes with the hearing. And that will give you 10 times more information than trying to interpret or put a story on it.
Yes, I love that. That's so, so helpful. Okay, should we go to another question?
Yeah, I want all the questions.
Several people had a somewhat similar question to this. Determining which voices are mine versus mind versus divine.
Okay. So, this is why there is a lifelong practice of developing your intuition, because this is where the intricacies come in. So, the mind versus the pure source of intuition. When pure source of intuition comes through, it's usually felt in the heart in some way. Like I was saying, a true intuitive hit always comes with a feeling, and that feeling is never anxiety. So 99% of the thoughts that we mistake for intuition are like, what if, or I'm anxious about this, or what if this is really what's going to happen, or is this the future? So that's one way. The second way is that a lot of times that messages come in from our guides, our higher self, our soul. It's in the second person. You've got this instead of I'm scared of this. So that's another way to distinguish. But it really just takes a lot of practice. And the thing is, I feel like we treat intuitive work like it's this mystical out there thing that we can't be evidence based in, but actually we can be evidence based with this. And I think for a lot of us, there are ways that we can, like, for example, one of the exercises, I won't give the whole exercise away, but I'll give the first part of it away. So, an exercise that came through to me is having the mentees each come with 6 statements about their life, true and false. They obviously know what's true and what's false. And I won't say what the kind of catch flip side of the exercise is with the second set of questions, but with the first 3, it's all about just telling their partner, I have a cat named Steve. And then that partner sitting with that and being like, is this a yes or a no? And it can be validated if it's their mind trying to attach to a story and make sense of things and interpret things and analyze their body language and their face and their mannerisms to see if they're lying, or is it just that felt sense of yes? And it's going to depend on what the main clairs are. For some, they might hear yes. For some, they might feel a yes in their body. For some, they might see a green light. That means yes. It's all about the language we have with our angels and our guides. But that's like the practice. It takes, like, I can sit here for an hour and talk to you guys about intuition, but at a certain level, we need to practice and have the felt experience of what mind versus true divine really is. And I think a lot of us don't make space for this in the same way we would as any other skill that we wanted to get better at. We just kind of like think that we should be intermediate to advanced, but we're not setting spaciousness for silence. We're not doing our daily divination practices. We're not practicing with other people. We're not taking classes. We're just asking vague questions in our psyche about things we're attached to and then being really disappointed if we don't get it right. And so I think that everything I said, plus you can do exercises that you can get validation from and see, like, where did my mind come in? And so there's an exercise that I did at Mind Body Spirit UK that I'll probably do in the mentorship container too. And it's basically psychic, 2 truths and a lie. And I told everybody to tune into their partner's energy and ask for 2 truths about them. And they should just flow to you in not a forcing, grasping way, but an allowing way. And then I said, now make up a lie. And immediately that exercise is designed for you to feel the difference between what your mind grasping for a story feels like versus the divine flowing through you feels like. It's so different. When the mind comes in, it's like grasping and thinking and forcing and attaching and strategizing and reasoning. Whereas the intuition is just flowing through, it's quiet, it's intentional, and it usually surprises you in some way.
Yeah. That is so helpful. And it's just such an important piece about the practice of it. I think because it's, we use the term magic, we think that it's just like comes in at 100 and we just like get to have it. But, for my journey with it, I think I've been almost like unknowingly practicing it for years. And then in the past few years, like consciously realizing that I was in a practice of it. And now I'm at this check-in point where I'm really seeing like it has developed. And so I think that's also so important, like making the space to practice it and giving yourself the grace to be a beginner. I think that's so hard in this world. And I really loved, I don't know if you guys all know Dochi, she's this amazing artist, but she spoke about that. She's like, I don't know who needs to hear this, but if you're starting out at something, it's okay to be a beginner. And that's just so huge for us in every space. And why wouldn't that also be in this space? It's okay if you're not getting it right. That doesn't mean you won't. Keep at it.
And every time you've been quote unquote wrong, that means it was your mind, not the divine. What did that feel like? There's so much information from the no's, just as much as the yeses. The no's show us, okay, the mind's coming in. I tried to interpret. I was attached to an outcome. I was trying to force, not flow. That's when the no's come in, and we can learn so, so much. Like the no's are so valuable. And you can also troubleshoot the no's. Like sometimes when I'm in a mediumship reading, that's why, legit mediums are like, we don't want to know anything about your past loved ones, or else the mind will come in and make assumptions, judgments. We all have stereotypes that we might go to, because it's actually, especially when you're in a professional space, it can be really dysregulating to be in the unknown. And that's why the best intuitives and psychics and mediums are okay not knowing, because that lets our mind be quiet. Because our mind, when we ask a question, immediately wants to give us the answer. And we have to get out of that so we actually have space for truth to come in. That's why meditation and quieting the mind is so important. But when I'm in a mediumship reading, I'm trying to think of a good example, but I think there was like a sister that came through, and I was like, oh, she's making me feel like she was more quiet or more private. And the sitter was like, no, she definitely wasn't quiet or private. So instead of getting into my head and being like, I'm wrong, you troubleshoot the no. What I actually got was, we didn't talk very much. But then my mind interpreted it to, she was more private and quiet. But no, she was just describing the relationship with the sitter. And when I reworked it and took out my own mind's interpretation to just what the truth was that was coming through, she could validate, oh, yeah, she was very private and quiet with me. That wasn't her personality out in the world, but she wouldn't tell me any of her secrets. So that is just one example of, just because you get a no, it doesn't mean you were completely off. It means your mind came in and interpreted something in a way that was trying to like wrap it up in a neat bow. But the main part of intuitive development is doing less. It's getting out of our own way. It's literally just reporting what came through. And that's it. That's for self divination, and that's for divination professionally for other people. It's doing less and giving exactly what you get. And so many times in self divination, and we've all been there, we have an attachment to outcomes and we get the answer about it and our mind doesn't like it and we don't give what we get. We're like, maybe it means this, or maybe it means in the future that. And that's such valuable information when you catch yourself doing it, because it's showing where your mind is trying so hard to come in and control.
Yes. Oh, that's so good. And that was what my next question was actually going to be. So maybe you can expand on that for us. Because a lot of people also wrote in with that same question. This is one of several. Why is it so much easier to read for someone else and not yourself? Tips for reading your own life. And let me pull up one other one so you can kind of tackle both. Why is it easier to see other stuff but blindsided by my own stuff? Yeah.
Yeah. So self divination is infinitely more difficult than reading for other people because it requires healing, excavation of our heart space, complete detachment from outcomes. It's kind of why I'm not a fan of pendulum work for self divination, because oftentimes our pendulum just tells us exactly what we want to hear, and we can get caught up in that because pendulum work, like self divination, is completely reliant on complete detachment from outcomes, or else your hand is going to subtly try to twitch in a direction that impacts it. But even like when we pull cards, when we're doing self divination, it's like, I don't get it. And it's like, yeah, because you're only looking for one thing that you want to see. That's the problem with self divination. We, again, attach to outcomes or what we want to hear, and we hyper focus. In fact, it just happened to me the other day, and I feel like this happens all the time. I can get hyper focused on career, and all my questions are about career, 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 career. And I'm like, I don't get this card. And they're like, that's because it's for your motherhood journey. So it's like sometimes we hyper focus on one area that we want guidance on. And I see this in my readings too, where the energy isn't flowing there right now. It's trying to take us somewhere else, but we get so rigid and fixed and stuck. And I think that too, sometimes with self divination, we're like, I don't get it. I feel heavy. I feel stuck. I don't understand. And it's like the heaviness and the stuckness is the message. It's telling you clearly what needs to go so that there's spaciousness there. So I think that self divination requires such a level of a devoted path to spiritual growth. And being a reader for other people does too, because you're going to grow in parallel to your oracle practice. But for self divination, there's just a whole other level. And that's why readers get reading. Healers need healing. Doctors don't treat themselves, they go to other doctors. It's like we're in community for a reason. We don't have to be perfect and have it all figured out. So that's another point. But the third point I want to say is that sometimes we are not always meant to know. And sometimes we feel into things, and our angels and guides will not give us an exact answer because it will rob us of the journey that we need to go on for the answer to even resonate with us. Sometimes we are not the version of self yet that is ready to actually hear the truth or the answer, and that's okay. And I always say this, that if we wanted to know everything, we would have stayed in the spirit world. But there is a journey of sometimes, it's funny that this is coming up because in a client session today, I was tapping into her, and it was actually so funny because she checked her notes, and this was a last minute reading posted on my stories. And she got a reading with me the same day last year. And it was like such a last minute thing. So it was really synchronistic. But her angels were showing me this path so full of twists and turns, and it was made of this blue light. And this always happens where what comes through in my readings is important for the podcast too. And so the message of this was like, there's twists and turns in the path, and that's by design. You aren't going to have your forever answer that you want because we're teaching you trust, trusting your intuition, knowing when something's expired, and jumping to the next thing. And so that's like a big part of our soul growth is actually more important than our intuitive development and having all of the answers. And sometimes we try to go down the intuitive development path to absolve ourselves from the human experience. And our angels and guides are never going to let us do that. Our human experience and being in the unknown and learning to trust ourselves is so important. And that's why often intuitive information, when it comes to self divination and even divination for clients, sometimes it's like the more attached to outcomes we are, the more I see this, that they only give us the next little baby step that we need to take. And the people who are the most detached, I get the most detailed answer for exactly what they need to do. And the people who are the most like kind of rigid and intense and attached, it's like, I can't tell you exactly what it is, but this is the direction that I see. This is the next step. This is the path of highest good. And so I think there's a level of the path of intuitive development that can't surpass soul development and learning trust in the unknown.
Oh, so many good points there. And, I agree. I think we want to avoid the hard things because, of course, but in the hard things, we grow and become. This last year, obviously, I've talked a lot about it, was like hard for me and a situation I would never have chosen to go the way it went. It went the opposite way I wanted it to go. And I feel now like it was such a gift, even though it was hard, because it was hard, it forced me to confront things that if it hadn't have been hard, I would have continued to carry with me. And if my angels had given me the answer on day one, hey, avoid this situation, it's going to be painful. First of all, I wouldn't have. And second of all, I probably would have been like, well, or this person's the right one for me. Either way, the gift of the situation was going through the experience. And so I think, like, even in readings, when you're the sitter and you're not doing it for yourself, it's like you said, I think our angels give us what we need in the moment for our highest good, not necessarily all of the answers. And so when we're reading for ourselves, I mean, I think it's just tough to read for yourself, to really have clarity, to really be detached and in the unknown. And I think the more you can just take what resonates in it without trying to fit it into like your desires, I think that'll be a lifelong practice for all of us because, of course, we have desires and of course, we're attached to outcomes. To completely detach is a hard thing to do.
Of course, and we're only human. And it's kind of akin to skipping to the last page of the book. If you didn't read the entire book and you skip to the last page, it wouldn't make sense to you. If you're on page 20 or 30 and you skip to page 385, you might not know all the characters. You're like, what do you mean the hero chose that? That doesn't resonate with me. That's not who the hero is. It's like, that just would not resonate. And so our angels and guides are like, hey, don't skip to the last chapter of the book. Stay here. And here's the guidance for the next chapter. Here's the theme for the next chapter. And a part of self divination being difficult also trickles into reading for friends and family. Many readers do not like to read for friends and family. And I'm the same exact way. The readings that I like to do for friends and family can be mediumship because I don't know information about their past loved ones. So it's like my mind isn't going to come in and just make stories based off of what I want for them, what I know for them. But we know our people so much, and we also have attachments for them as people that we love, that it's incredibly hard, just like in a self divination way, to give accurate psychic evidence for them. That's why a lot of people are like, the first reading I went to with this psychic was amazing. And then it went downhill after that. And it can be because they know things about you and then their mind comes in and they keep like either playing on judgments or assumptions. And that's why I don't take notes about my clients. Like some people have files, we talked about this, or this is a theme with them. I don't want to know anything. Luckily, I have a horrible short term memory. Like, I don't even know what we discussed in part one of intuitive development. We recorded it like a week or two ago. And so I think that's like one of my gifts is like I genuinely do not remember things, but that's for the best because then my mind can't come in. So I have long term clients and it works out because I genuinely don't remember. And so for anybody developing your intuition or doing client sessions, it can feel tempting to be like, I want to have a Rolodex of everybody's things so that I can familiarize myself before I go in the session. But you'll actually be doing yourself a disservice if you do that.
Yeah, it's so true. I haven't had a reading with you in forever because we're too close and you're too invested in all the details of my life. It's like neither of us are detached from what's going on with me.
Exactly. But then we have some mutual friends who are kind of distant and they're like, I want a reading and I also want to catch up. And I'm like, okay, let's catch up, but after your reading, because I want to know as little as possible going into this.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that's just like be gentle with yourselves when you're doing your own readings. It's not to say that it isn't helpful. I mean, I love my self divination practice. I get so much out of pulling cards for myself. It can really help me in a moment where I feel lost and unsure to get a direction from the cards that feels so in sync with what I'm facing of a next step. And when I'm in the right mindset to receive it, it's so beneficial. And when I'm fishing for an answer, like I've done that with my pendulum over and over again. And I've had that show up where it's like, it doesn't feel super accurate. because my energy is like all over it.
Do you feel like it was saying what you wanted to hear at times?
Sometimes, but also then sometimes it's been tricky and I haven't really been able to pin down what I should be using it for because it's really an amazing, like even friends will observe it, like my pendulum is moving and I am not moving it. So something is happening, but it's been wrong many times. And so I'm not really sure how to differentiate between my desires, between my hopes. Sometimes it will surprise me with an answer. So I'm like, well, that couldn't have been what I was thinking. And my energy is unknown even to me in moments. So it could be a facet of my energy that I'm not even able to perceive. So yeah, I'm not really sure what to do with it, but it is so cool to see how like it really moves when I ask it things.
It's so cool. And my aunt, she like sometimes puts it over a board with letters on it and will like spell things out. So that's kind of an interesting way she uses her pendulum. And she's like, what's the name of the guide that's with me right now? And interesting names have been spelled out. So it's just, I think pendulums are fun, but I don't think they're super reliable.
Yeah, that's been my experience with it. It was a beautiful confirmation of magic is real when I first used it because you told me like a yes looks like this, a no looks like this. And the first time I did it, it gave it to me in reverse, which felt like a way that it was saying like I wasn't influencing it. Like it was moving how it decisively did it, but the opposite way I was expecting.
Yes. And each pendulum is a little different. So you ask the pendulum, like, show me a yes, show me a no, show me a maybe, and it will show you its version because some go, horizontal then vertical, some go in a clockwise circle then counterclockwise. So, and like to me, it's funny when using a pendulum because sometimes you ask a question and it just stops. And that's like, oh, I don't want to talk about that, or the answer isn't ready to come. And then sometimes it would stop and then start like, really slightly going back and forth, and it almost made me feel like my angels were laughing.
That's how I feel. It'll shake in this way where I feel like they're laughing at me and they're like, you already asked us this, or like, we're not going to tell you.
Yeah, and that leads me to the next thing I wanted to say, which is with self divination, some of the most difficult parts of it can be accepting what comes in, even if it's the answer that we didn't want. And I think, like, in self divination and also mediumship readings or angel readings, you can feel when the reading is over. You can feel when the power has built up, built up, built up. You're in the flow of it. You're getting the information, you're resonating. And you can feel when the power starts to wane and the reading has concluded. And I think that from a self divination place, it can be tempting if you didn't get the answer that your nervous system wanted to hear to keep pulling cards, keep asking questions, keep feeling in, keep journaling, which fine. But that's when you've started to look for information other than what is actually coming in. And so that's why the professional version is give what you get. But I guess like the personal version of that will be like accept what was given.
Yes, absolutely. That's beautiful. And I think too, like this just popped into my head too with the pendulum, but I feel like part of the answers, it's like what we were saying before. Maybe it gave me an answer that was wrong, but it was leading me to the lesson I needed to learn. So it maybe gave me a yes and it ended up being a no. But if I'd gone into the situation already knowing, oh, this isn't a good situation for me, I wouldn't have confronted it in the same way and then learned the same thing from it. Because we're not supposed to go through life being told, do this, do that. It's like our angels and guides don't want to dictate what we're supposed to do. They want us to come to those realizations. They want us to decide, I want to be with this person, but they are not showing up for me in a way that lights me up and serves me. So I need to walk away. Not because my angels and guides or my friend or my reader was like, this person isn't good for you, but because I have learned to love myself so deeply that I'm going to choose not to be with someone who isn't good for me. That's the lesson, not to just listen to the signs and not learn the lesson. So it's like that can be even be part of the signs and symbols. It's like they're guiding you to your highest good, not to the quick and easy solution.
Yes, it's like maybe you asked for a blue butterfly as a sign that this person is your soulmate and you see it, and then you're like, this person's my soulmate, or you get a yes on your pendulum and then they don't turn out to be your husband, which, by the way, is a whole other question that wasn't phrased that way. But maybe it's just, yes, keep exploring. Yes, the energy is flowing there. Yes, there's unfinished business between the two of you. And it goes back to that discussion we had. It was on a listener question episode. I'm not sure exactly which one, about when readings don't resonate with you. You know, sometimes it's because you're either not ready for the answer, or you leave and you don't feel complete and you can't like really settle with the information that was given. And that shows there's more lessons to be learned, more on the journey. And that's really what we're here to do. We're not here like the top psychics and mediums have their own stuff that we're navigating and that they don't know about and that we have to go through because we're all just humans.
Yeah, exactly. It's like what we were saying, we're not trying to avoid the human journey. We're trying to be in it as deeply and richly as we can.
And I think if we always come back to truth, authenticity, personal power, and love, those pillars are always going to be what our intuition will guide us back to anyway, and our higher self will guide us back to anyway. So it's like, reverse engineering whatever situation you're in through those pillars will give you the answer that you need.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Okay, do we have time for maybe one more?
Yeah,
I'm torn between these two.
let's do both.
Okay. This person says, I feel like it's just always wrong.
Yeah. So, something to know is that intuition is never wrong. So, it just means that you actually weren't tapped into your intuition. Your mind was probably getting in the way. And, like I was saying before, we can sometimes feel like we have to be advanced at this. And we've never had any formal training or any toolbox given or any education. And then we get really down on ourselves and we throw the baby out with the bathwater. But spirit is never wrong, intuition is never wrong. If it's a no and it's not panning out that way, it can either be because people made different free will decisions and the future is never set in stone, or it can be because it's giving you valuable information about what a no feels like and where your mind got involved. And maybe a constant no, no, no is your angels and guides being like, it's okay to get assistance in this space. It's okay to ask for help, to have a mentor, to have a tutor, to practice with people. It doesn't mean that you're not intuitive. It just means that you're looking in the wrong place.
It's so true. And also, so I think this is a listener who wrote in with a question a while ago. And I believe the question was around it was like they were looking for a house. They felt like the signs were pointing to this house. It felt like it was a yes. And then the house fell through. And so it felt like I can't trust my intuition because the signs were pointing to this and it fell through. And I think, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that, of course, but I feel like that is a place where we're deciding that the signs are meaning a certain thing and deciding that we know everything. But perhaps the signs were pointing you to explore that house and then explore the feeling of the no to lead you to something even greater.
Absolutely. So I think signs can be really tricky for that because it goes into interpretation versus accepting what we're actually getting. We can't help but interpret the sign to what we want it to mean. That's why I think signs are better used as a way of like proof of connection, proof of your angels being there, invitations to connect deeper with them, signs that we might be in flow and that we're supported. Like all of that is so beautiful. But my intuition about this is that there were aspects of the house that were a yes. And so sometimes, and that's what I was talking about in the beginning, there are layers to the energy, and some layers to the energy are yes, and some are no. It can be like, this is a yes, this is a yes, this is a yes, but this part is a no. I think that's why sometimes we oversimplify things with our signs. Is this a yes or a no? And that's why I think it's really good to like, as you start to advance, you understand there's layers to the energy. So if you were getting yes, 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 then something about that house resonated intuitively for you. Maybe explore that and get clear on that. And then that will be confirmation for the house that you end up in. But it's sometimes not so black and white as all a yes, all a no. And that also goes into other people's free will and other people's timelines. It's like things like buying a house have so many different factors and variables. So I would just focus on what about that house felt like a yes to you, because that might show up in the next house that you find.
Yeah. And something I love that you always talk about in terms of signs and synchronicities, it's like instead of using them as like, oh, I saw this angel number when I was thinking about the house, so that means it's a yes. It's like a great opportunity to just tap into like, oh, I feel like all the signs are pointing me to this thing. How do I feel about it? Do I feel like it's a yes? The signs seem to be saying it's a yes. And what do I, when I get really still and quiet and think about this, what do I think? Because I've had that with men or relationships or whatever, where I think like so much of me wants it to be a yes. And there are many yeses about it. But if I really got honest with myself, I would probably see that it wasn't a 100% yes, that deep down I knew that there were facets of it that weren't quite it. And my wanting of it to be it and the signs are pushing me to think, well, there's many factors that are a yes. And I saw the angel number, so it's a yes, versus realizing that like pieces of it are a yes, which will help me guide me to the actual 100% yes. And that it's also just like a helpful teaching moment to really tap into what I'm feeling, not what the signs say, but what I'm feeling.
Yes, 1,000,000%. And I think the constant need for signs and validation might also point to that small percentage of our truth that feels uncertain, unsteady, and like it's not 100% yes. Because, kind of like I was talking about in the beginning, I knew that my mentorship program was 100% yes, but I was feeling some blocks, some resistance, and a layer to the energy that was not right now. And so I, without being like, what does this mean? Show me a sign. Am I supposed to do the mentorship? I was like, okay, I feel like I don't have space to create this right now. I'm going to go travel. I'm going to go live my life and I'm going to come back to it. Then when you're in flow and it is 100% yes, it's easy. It writes itself. It flows. And every good thing in my life has worked out that way. It's like whenever I've had the need to like pull a bunch of cards or look for a sign, it's things I was uncertain with and dysregulated about. And there was maybe aspects that were a yes and met some of my needs, but a lot that also didn't. So I think like also as you go along this path, you start to realize like, oh, I'm in flow with this thing or I'm not, and not taking it as I'll never be in flow with this thing, I'll never get this thing, but just saying, okay, I'm gonna pump the brakes on that area. It's feeling a little stuck and stagnant. I'm gonna let that go. I'm gonna flow in this way of whatever's calling me over here, and I'm sure I'll circle back when that's ready. So I feel like you start to build more trust with your path, with your timing, with yourself on this intuitive journey. And it helps you be in flow with your angels and guides instead of trying to like push one area of life into the outcome that you really want it to be.
Yeah, that's such a good way to put it. It's like that's pushing versus being in flow, which is, I think, the point.
And I think that's a huge intuitive development lesson, is allowing, not forcing. Because when you're in a client session too, and there's somebody sitting across from you and they're like, should I leave my husband? It is a lot. It's a huge responsibility to be in that space. And it can be really tempting for your mind to be like, force, 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 get an answer, get an answer, get an answer. And sometimes the answer is let's rewind. Let's start to look back at trusting what wants to come through. And it might take you on a different journey that's surprising you. Whereas your mind is like, oh, okay, focus on an answer. Yes, leave him. But if you actually open to intuitive development and like the intuition that wants to come through, it might surprise you. I'm like, oh, okay. Your angels and guides are showing me something that happened 6 years ago. And I want to talk about your son. And I want to talk about this. And it's like, oh, okay. Yeah. 6 years ago, my son had a bad accident. Okay. And I want to say that's when some fighting happened and some blame. And you start to get to the heart of things with true intuition that takes you on a different direction than sometimes the client or sitter even knows to ask about. And if you're so connected to the mind of needing an answer for them right here, right now, you're not allowing the truth to actually come through. You're trying to force what they want to hear.
Yes, that's such a great way to look at it. It's again the unknown, like thinking that we know everything so that this is where we have to look for the answer. But the answer might be somewhere we didn't even think to look. And the more open we can be, the more we will tap in or the more information we'll probably get.
And chances are the sitter is already hyper focused on the one area they want to see. And it's up to the spirit world through you to direct their attention to what needs to be seen. I had a client who all she wanted to talk about is if she would have another baby. And she was so frantic about having another baby, being afraid to have another baby. And instead of me feeling pressure to be like, yes, you'll have another baby, the message that came through is, she already had two babies. I was like, I want to talk about like you not having a daughter. She validated that. And instead of it being about her having another baby or not, it was a fear of what would happen if she didn't have a girl because of things that have happened ancestrally. So the answer actually, and what we explored in the session, was nothing about if she would have another baby. It was about passed down ancestral beliefs about girls that she was here to be a cycle breaker for. And so I think that that's what's so beautiful, is that as a reader, our job is literally to do less. Like we just have to get out of the way, because the intelligence and beauty and divinity of the spirit world and of our angels is perfect. Our mind is not. Our mind tries to filter everything through stories and stereotypes and judgments and then shoot something out that is not. It's like a game of telephone. And in a game of telephone, can you copy the tone? Can you copy the feel? Can you copy the exact voice? That's our job. That is our job. And for self divination and for divination for clients, our job is to give exactly what we're getting or accept exactly what we're getting. And when we can do that, that is when an answer more perfect than we could conceive of or try to force in our mind will come through.
That's so beautiful, Taylor. I love that. I feel like that's a good lesson for life. Do less.
Do
Do
less.
less. You got to do something.
Yeah. Don't do
Don't
nothing.
do nothing. But how can you do less and like be in the flow and find that it's less of a push and more of a receiving?
Exactly. And when we can be in that place, that is when we have these like breakthrough aha moments that can give us the most comfort and up level.
Yes, absolutely.
Do we have a last question?
Let's do it. Okay. How to know intuitive feelings and images in meditation from imagination or fears.
Yeah, that's a good one. I think anything that comes in a fearful way is clearly that anxious fear attachment place. And so sometimes when we're in meditation, remember, fear always has that connotation of what if. So I think in meditation, knowing that it's your intuition, it might be like symbols, colors, feelings. There might just be an element that surprises you. Like, I really do feel like intuitive information comes with a feeling of surprise sometimes, like, oh, I wasn't expecting to see that. So I would just kind of document it all down. But I feel like, this kind of like fear versus intuition thing, I've spoken about it a few times, that like if it induces anxiety, when it comes in, that's not intuition. So even if it's talking about something that is tender or difficult for you, it will be an insight, a solution, a way forward, a message of hope or healing. I'm not sure if we said this in part one, because, like I said, my memory is my memory, but intuitive information is helpful, healing, or hopeful. And if it's not that, it is not from spirit. It is not from your angels and guides. So in meditation, if something comes in that is not hopeful, helpful, or healing, it's either your mind wanting to bring fears to your attention as information showing you where you can heal or detach from outcomes or take your power back in some way. Or if it's hopeful, healing, solution oriented, and calm, even if it's just a color of light around you, but you feel angelic presence or divine support when you see that color of light. That is an example of intuition. I'm trying to think of examples, but like early on in my practice when I would meditate, I would sometimes ask my angels and guides, like, show me something that will make sense later in the day. And you can start to play games with them in this way. And I remember the Rihanna song, Must Be Love on the Brain, popped into my head. And it was like, Must be love on the brain. And I was like, huh, okay. And I like jotted that down in my little miracle journal. And then later that day, it's when I was still dating Ari. So 5 years ago in 2020, and I had so much time for my daily freaking practice because everything was closed down. I was like literally so good about every single thing at that time. And then so I was like, okay, must be love on the brain. I was like cleaning and cooking and just doing all the lockdown stuff. And then later that day, Ari called me and impromptu, wasn't expecting it, was like, hey, do you want to go for a hike today or do you want to hang out today? And I was like, oh, that's so funny. Unexpectedly seeing Ari today. And in my meditation, they showed me must be love on the brain. So we were thinking about each other. So there's fun things like that. And again, you start to get repetition and experience with that. Again, I can like say this till I'm blue in the face, all of these delineations, but until you feel and experience them for yourselves and do it over and over and learn to trust yourself, you'll stay in this place of questioning every single thing that comes through.
Yeah, I love what you said about looking for the unexpected things because I think that's like a great guidepost. It's like if you're having fearful thoughts about something you're stressing about, that's like kind of expected, right? Of course you are because you're stressing about it. So that's probably not your intuition. But if you have some sort of hearing or knowing about something that you couldn't have subconsciously like thought of, to me that feels like a good indicator of somewhere to look because your brain probably couldn't have cooked that up.
Yes. And I find with intuitive information that actually comes through and surprises us, it's usually accompanied by a thought of that couldn't be right. So, where fear is like, what if? Intuitive information is like, that's probably not right. And it is our instinct to gaslight ourselves out of our intuition, to debate our intuition, to talk over our intuition. And so I remember at that same COVID time period, I got the intuitive message and meditation in the morning of friends are going to come surprise you. And I was like, that's probably my intuition. That's probably not right. And then later that day, two of our mutual friends were in the neighborhood on their walk with their masks and surprised me outside. And so I was like, oh my gosh, that was right. So I feel like sometimes with intuitive information, like in a reading and stuff, I'll be like, I'm looking for the answer. And then something will pop into my head and I'm like, I don't know what that is, but I'm looking for the answer. And so, like, I remember I was in a mediumship reading and this woman lost her son, and it was very early on in my development and she wanted to connect with her son. I was like, connect with her son, connect with her son. And the image of a bracelet made of wooden beads kept popping into my head. And I was like, okay, I don't know what that is, but let's connect with her son. And then I was like, wait, why would a bracelet made of wooden beads pop into my head? That is so random. And sometimes if you realize, like when names pop into my head, I'm like, why would I just think of the name Donna? I don't even know a Donna. Actually, I do know Donna. Sorry, Donna. But sometimes when the random things pops into your head, and then I told the mom that, and she started crying, saying that's the last thing she had of him is this bracelet made of wooden beads. And she couldn't believe that I just said that. And she usually wears it, but she wasn't right now. And so it's like these things that surprise us and pop in out of nowhere, and we immediately discount them and look for what our brain thinks we should be seeing. And so that's why the intuitive development journey is such a mind F because it requires like just trusting what you're getting at a deep, deep level.
Yeah, that trust. And I think that's why it's so great. As you're developing, write things down, don't put too much on it. See what, okay, I saw that, put it down, and then maybe it'll make sense later. Not trying to interpret, but really just trying to trust.
Exactly. It's all trust. It's all allowing. And at a certain level, without acceptance and radical truth, there can be no intuitive development.
Mm. Yes, well said.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's about that time to transition to sitting with spirit.
Let's do it.
Welcome back to Sitting with Spirit, the part of the podcast where I sit with our angels, our guides, our loved ones in spirit and give the messages for the collective. As always, take what resonates and leave the rest. So I feel as I tune into the energy right now, it's getting difficult for me to read. And I feel like that difficulty to read the energy is reflective of how mixed and layered these energetic times are. I was feeling joy and magic and expansion and birth, and simultaneously death and fear and worry. And it just feels so scrambled and so all over the place. And as I was tuning into, there's always this sense of layered energetic times, but I think that it's this intensity that I'm feeling where like the good is heightened, the challenging is heightened. And when it's that heightened, it's hard to accurately tune into because we can be swept up in that energy. And so as I was tuning more into this, I was getting frustrated and I was like, I'm not able to really firmly put my like feelers on a read of this other than it's a little all over the place and layered. And that's when it hit me that there was something bigger to this theme that I need to talk about. And that can be the way that our angels and our guides communicate. Sometimes there's blocks or difficulties. Sometimes there's situations where the conditions are less conducive for intuitive connection. And those are the conditions that I feel like we are living in collectively right now. That being said, I feel this need to issue a warning about blindly trusting fear based intuitive reads on the collective right now. I feel like whenever we're in a moment of uncertainty and heightened collective energy, there's a spectrum of intuitive practitioners, and what they put out into the world talking about the energy ranges from people who flat out are trying to capitalize on fear, just like certain other people in the non spiritual space do the same thing because fear can sell. And then I think there's well meaning practitioners who are also putting fear out in a way that might not be the most helpful, empowering, or uplifting. And so, what I want to say is, I think that as I'm tuning into the energy right now, sometimes we have to realize that the conditions are not conducive for clear reads. And the energy is very heightened right now. And I think sometimes when the energy is heightened and people are scared, instead of picking up on accurate intuitive information, we're picking up on each other's worries, or we're picking up on heightened collective energy and then mistaking it for intuitive information. And so I think that can be a really common culprit. I think that the algorithm can create an echo chamber of fear. And then if somebody's picking up on something different than that, they're not trusting it because everyone is saying one thing. And so I really feel like this is a week for boundaries, for coming back to your own energy, for tuning into the wisdom of your own heart, and not letting yourself get swept up in collective waves of trying to control, predict, or intuit what is going to happen, but instead really staying present. Because, like I was saying, the energy feels very heightened right now. And I did feel a lot of love and joy and potential in this time too. So I think just take some deep breaths, reconnect back to your body. Notice when the mind is trailing and moving into the future or getting sucked into rabbit holes of information. And it's a good thing to be informed, it's a good thing to care. But just noticing where things are trying to zap you out of your own intuitive connection and where one single narrative is trying to establish itself as the only truth, and running that through the barometer of your own heart space. I think that this is a moment where that projection is part of the difficult conditions for intuitive connection. I record these sitting with spirits weeks, sometimes months before the episode actually comes out. So I don't know what will be happening when this comes out, of course, but the feeling that I get is trust your spiritual discernment. Don't get swept up in the collective and stay true to yourself. And a lot of like the information that I feel that's being shared is based in ego and projection in some way. So with that being said, I saw a bunch of chess pieces on a board. And I got the feeling that, like, right now is a time for us to play chess, not checkers, I guess, and to take stock of our pieces, to move the ones that are possible. Sometimes in chess, you can't move a piece, but seeing what our best move is, there's something about logic and strategy and making a game plan that's coming up with these chess pieces of our life. Like, which pieces on the board can be moved for our highest good, and where do we maybe need to come back to the drawing board in some way, or be more strategic in some way, or make a plan, make some action steps or a list, create new energetic strategies. Something with logic and reason being applied in that way feels very supportive right now. And then I was also seeing butterfly as an animal guide for the week, which is so transformative. And I felt like there was a particular emphasis on the kind of shedding of the chrysalis, the letting go of things so that the wings could be spread. So I feel like this is just a very transformative time. And I think the puzzle pieces are moving around. And I think we need to stay in our own lanes with our own intuitive knowings. And I really feel the need for like being in nature, being off screens less, being with community, taking time for silence and solitude, like everything tapped into the physical body, not just the air sign, social media, constant information inundation. Like, we're not designed for that. And I think that that constant buzz of intake and information is also what makes me feel like the intuitive conditions are not conducive right now. So if you're on your own intuitive development journey, or you feel like you're having a hard time trusting what you're getting, or the channel seems a little bit dim, focus more on creating conducive conditions than trying to force the intuitive information to come through. That just means that that's not where the energy is flowing right now. Sometimes it's great to just sit in the power and receive healing from your angels and guides. Sometimes the channel isn't all about receiving information, even if that's what we really want. Take care of yourself and go with where the energy is flowing for you. And if it feels like a kind of jumbled time where it's hard to exactly pinpoint the answers that you need, go with what is in your power here and there. Look at the chess pieces that you can move here and now and do your best with those. So, the other thing that was coming through was to stay with our angels. So this goes back to, if you're a longtime listener of the pod, I might have shared this on episode 101. Not positive though, but it's a story of when I was basically early on my path, and I was very mad at my angels and upset and indignant towards them. And I was thinking that the person I was dating at the time was like going to be a soulmate connection. And I had all of this attachment to outcomes with that person. And then it didn't work out. And now that I'm with my husband, I'm like, thank goddess I didn't get what I wanted. But at the time, I was very distraught. I was questioning my own intuition. I was mad at my angels. I know this probably sounds familiar to some of you guys. And as I was tuning into my angels, I was like mad at them. And I was like, angels, if you were really with me, I was like stomping around Salem, Massachusetts as I was going on in my head like this. I was like, if you were really with me, then how could I have been so wrong? And how did this not work out? And my angels basically said, we're always with you. You are not always with us. And that was the moment that really changed so much for me. And in Salem, Massachusetts, I got myself that promise ring, which I lost. And I tell the story of that ring in episode 201. So go back to that if you feel called. And that's the message that I feel like a lot of us need to hear right now. Stay with your angels. What does that mean? It means taking time out for silence, noticing where victim narratives are trying to come up, and take your power back. And remember, we were never the victim. We're always the goddess waiting to remember herself. And staying with our angels means staying in a higher place of trust and love and sacred space, forgiveness, compassion, empathy, and really that angelic frequency within us. And it's not always easy. And I'm not saying bypass the difficult moments or bury your head in the sand. In fact, if you do that, you can't access your angels, because to access that much light, you have to have also done the shadow work on yourself to actually access that much light. So staying with your angels is choosing love. And sometimes that looks like diving headfirst into the shadows to reclaim your power. So, right now is just all about staying with your angels as much as possible, being an angel on earth as much as possible. And the message that I got is there is more light at work than we can currently see. There is more light at work on earth than we can currently see. And I feel like our angels and guides are working overtime in this moment. And we need to constantly set the boundaries to come back to our light, to come back to our angelic consciousness, to come back to our earth angel energy, because the world is designed for us to forget, to be dysregulated, to be in separation and hate. We have to constantly be creating the conducive conditions within ourself and our light to stay with our angels because they are always with us. So I want to go into the mediumship now. This was a very interesting mediumship connection. And sometimes this happens where instead of getting somebody who would have been alive in recent memory and maybe familiar to somebody in the hummingbird community, I had a spirit person here who lived hundreds of years ago. And it was so interesting the way they came through because it started with my ears feeling so clogged up. And I knew that this person was deaf and couldn't hear anything. And the way that they showed me that through clairsentience was so interesting. I have never felt a deaf person before or what it felt like to be deaf or partially deaf. And that was a very interesting phenomenon to me. And so I had this spirit person who was showing me that like gender roles, stories, and expectations didn't really apply to them because they were deaf, mute, and a leper that lived outside of the confines of society. And I felt connected to India. I felt like there was a connection there to that part of the world. And I did feel this sense of them being a male when they were here, but there was this feeling of like, I feel like there maybe would have been a couple people that were also in that community with him, but it's like everything that we base our worth on, our stories of self, how we show up in the world, didn't feel like it applied to this spirit person when they were here. And I feel like through this experience, this spirit person found enlightenment. There was a lot of suffering. There was a lot of pain in the physical body. There was a lot of sort of trauma, especially in the early part of his life. But through complete detachment and deafness and sort of not being able to speak or hear other people, there was also this sense of once completely surrendered to almost a euphoria of complete detachment. It's hard to explain and it's hard for us to even conceptualize in our modern day, especially if we are not a leper or mute or deaf, and especially all three, the way it came together. And as I felt it, this spirit person was really showing me more of what he ultimately got to from that state and less about the suffering part of it. And he said that his soul chose this experience to really learn complete detachment from expectations, from stories, from, constrictions. And he really wanted to focus on the deafness, and that through deafness, he learned heart listening, and that we have forgotten how to listen with our heart, and that we need to listen with our heart more than ever. And he was showing me the earth's heartbeat, and that our heart can sync up with the earth's heart, and that all of the animals and creatures on this planet can remember the earth's heartbeat and can sync up with the rhythms and the cycles of the earth's heartbeat, and that we have forgotten how to listen with our heart. And I think what that means is we can be so fooled by words and stories and ideas that the heart can see the truth of underneath, whether it's rooted in love or fear. And when we listen from the heart, that's actually an intuitive skill, is like breathing into the heart, listening from the heart. And that's a big form. I think clairsentience is heart listening, if I had to put another word to it. And so I think right now, in this time of so much suffering, so many narratives, so much whataboutism, so much which side are you on? I think it's so important to learn to listen with our heart and to feel into the clairsentience and to realize this is just rooted in pain and there's deeper opportunities for healing in all of these narratives. And somebody might be yelling at you and saying mean things. And if you listen with your heart and don't get distracted by the words and the stories and the insults and the affronts to the ego, you can see that's just a person in pain. That's a person whose needs aren't being met. And there's deeper layers of truth underneath the distraction of words that this spirit person learned by not being able to hear external stimuli. He really learned to listen through his heart and communicate through his heart, which is not even with words, it's with action, love, energy, presence. And so I think that we need to come out of the head as a collective and learn to listen to our heart again and listen with our heart to really get to the deeper truth in this world where there's just so much noise all the time. And I know, like, when I read Gordon Higginson's autobiography, or not autobiography, just biography, when he was a child, he in his mediumship circle would be blindfolded and have earplugs in. And that's the way that he could get better, accurate information from the spirit world instead of looking for external stimuli to stimulate the imagination and that getting in the way of getting true, accurate information. And so I think with what this beautiful spirit person is showing us is that there's so much space for deeper intuitive development and enlightenment when we can turn off the senses that are stimulating our imagination, our fearful projections, and our ego, and just listen to our own heart, to the heartbeat of the earth, and to the hearts of the people around us who maybe aren't used to being listened to on a heart level. There might be a way that you can show up through heart listening that cuts right to the heart of the situation in a way that can allow for progress or detangling. And so this was a really powerful and unexpected message to come through. And I encourage everybody to take time this week to listen with their heart and to listen to their heart and to take time to just breathe into their truth of their heart. And I think so many of us on our intuitive and spiritual development journeys are always trying to reach our consciousness for spirit people, for angels, for guides, and get information from other sources coming into us. And I think what we need more of now is sitting in our own energy, tuning into our own heart and the wisdom there, and just diving into the deeper waters of that heart space and just listen without the intention to fix or solve or know or claim, to just listen and see what comes through, because it will always be more perfect than anything we could try to create or grasp or control. Is just surrendering to the truth of the heart that is. So thank you so much to this beautiful spirit person for coming through. He said that there is a medicine in deafness, and that sometimes with that deafness, we can ironically hear more than we would if we were only paying attention to words. So very deep, very beautiful. And I, for one, am definitely going to be taking more time to listen to the truth of what my heart hears. I hope that you have a beautiful rest of your week, everyone, and we will see you next time.
For more information on Taylor and her work, go to angelsandamethyst.com or connect with her on Instagram at angels_and_amethyst. She is the one verified account with this name and will never DM you for a reading. If you have any questions about intuition, spirituality, angels, or anything and everything magical, please email contact@magichourpod.com. We will answer listener questions once a month in our solo episodes. Are you an aligned business owner that would like to advertise to our beautiful hummingbird community? Please email contact@magichourpod.com. Make sure you're subscribing to Magic Hour so you never miss the magic. And don't forget to leave us 5 sparkling star reviews. They help more magical people find the pod. Please screenshot and email your 5-star reviews to contact@magichourpod.com, and we'll send you a free downloadable angelic meditation and enter you to win an angel reading with Taylor Paige. If you review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, we'll add your name twice. And if you share the podcast on your Instagram story and tag us, we'll add your name a third time. The next giveaway will happen when we hit 222 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
Thank you for listening to Magic Hour with Taylor Paige. Remember, you are magic.